This all started about a year ago. You see, last spring, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, my wife and I decided that rather than spend the day outside in the rain, we'd spend it inside, and we decided to wander around the Metropolitan Museum of Art, like we've done many times before and many times since. On this particular day, though, they were holding an exhibition centered around a painting that's in their permanent collection, but I'd never seen it before, Circus Sideshow by George Seurat. And I stood there in front of this painting for a good long while, trying to figure out something about it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. You see, it's a very mysterious painting. It's a nocturnal scene, but it glows. It's a scene that's full of life and music and motion, but it's quiet and still. It's a painting that has depth based on the light and the placement of the figures in it, but it feels flat. I couldn't quite nail down exactly what it was about this painting that caused it to stick in my brain so hard. So after we left, with it still swirling around my head, I decided to do what I always do when things like that happen. I started reading and writing and researching, and basically started making this video. And at the end of all of that, I think that what's really at the heart of Circus Sideshow is balance. Circus Sideshow was painted by French Neo-Impressionist pioneer George Seurat. He first exhibited it in 1888 at the Salon des Indépendants alongside another of his works, The Models. While The Models received critical praise, Circus Sideshow was almost universally ignored. The painting depicts a circus sideshow, or parade de cirque, the act performers would put on in front of a traveling circus tent designed to attract interest and entice passerbys to step up and purchase tickets to the main show. Specifically, Circus Sideshow depicts the parade of the Corvée Circus, a popular traveling circus specializing in animal-based acts. The scene is the Corvée Sideshow as Seurat saw them at the annual Gingerbread Fair in Paris in 1887. Comparing Circus Sideshow with photographs of the Corvée Circus show us just how accurately Seurat depicted the parade. The central figure, the trombonist, is standing on a dais, set out in front of the main stage. Behind and above him is a row of gaslights. Further back, behind the gaslights, a row of musicians plays on the left. And on the right stands the circus buffoon and the show's owner, Ferdinand Corvée. At the far right of the canvas, a woman and her daughter are buying tickets at the window, while more people climb the central stairs behind them. George Seurat was born on December 2, 1859, in Paris. As a young man, he worked in a design school, and soon entered the renowned École des Beaux-Arts, where he further developed his classical skills for at least 3 years. In 1879, he left the school to serve a compulsory year in the military. Once his military service was complete, Seurat opted not to return to the school, but rather to move to Paris and enter the art world. Rejecting the classical education he received at school, he studied the works of Eugène Delacroix and the writings of critic Charles Blanc, physicist Ogden Rood, and theoretician David Sutter, among others. As Blanc wrote in the preface to his Grammar of Painting and Engraving, "The art education of the young is completely null. The proud and brilliant laureate finishes his classical studies without getting the least tincture out of it." This sentiment could certainly be applied to Seurat. While he was a talented artist in a classical sense, this type of work did not fulfill him. He was searching for something new. Over the next few years, Seurat would develop a technique based on color science, using the interaction of small dots of solid color to create the effect of light when viewed from a distance. This idea evolved out of Impressionism's focus on accurately depicting light and how light interacts with the objects in a scene, but rather than follow Impressionism's looser, more visible brushstrokes, Neo-Impressionists, also called pointillists, painted with small dots, crafting light's effects through the color's interactions in the eye itself. Peering into Seurat's sources, we can begin to see the origins of his ideas. There is, however, another, lower degree of gradation, which has a peculiar charm of its own, and is very precious in art and nature. The effect referred to takes place when different colors are placed side by side, in lines or dots, and then viewed at such a distance that the blending is more or less accomplished by the eye of the beholder. If the colored lines or dots are quite distant from the eye, the mixture is of course perfect, and presents nothing remarkable in its appearance. But before this distance is reached, there is a stage in which the colors are blended, though somewhat imperfectly, so that the surface seems to flicker or shimmer. Ogden Rood, Modern Chromatics. Charles Blanc also wrote of the color theories of French scientist Michel-Eugene Chevreul. Notably, his idea that primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, have the strongest chromatic effect, i.e., they pop, when paired with their complementary colors, green, violet, and orange. Combine this basic idea of color science with David Sutter's more defined rules of painting, and you begin to see some of the science behind Circus Sideshow. Rule number 128, there are 3 warm colors, red, orange, yellow. Rule number 129, there are 3 cold colors, green, blue, violet. Rule 150, a color is always modified by the proximity of another color. Circus Sideshow is almost divided evenly into a warm half on the left and a cold half on the right, with the interaction of these two halves causing the trombonist to stand out. I say almost because not only do these two pieces blend together around the crowd, rule number 130, when the light is warm, the shadows are cold, but also because the warm side clearly has some violets and blues, while the cold side, oranges and reds. It is this interaction between solid colors, rather than the mixing of paints to create the perfect pigment, that gives the picture its glow. Seurat uses color science to create an artistic aesthetic. He mutes the details, shallows out the perspective, and leaves behind the glow of the gaslights. Seurat balances light and shadow, warm and cold, to create a gaslight glow on a summer's night. He balances shadows of violet with flecks of orange and yellow. He sprinkles blue in a field of orange and dots of red in a sea of green. But most important of all, he balances science and art to create wonder. While it may seem like I'm coldly dissecting this painting, taking away its mystery and a logical explanation of method, I think of it as something different. The painting is beautiful, and through all of this, my appreciation of it has only grown. Knowing Seurat's technique doesn't diminish the artistic genius that went into creating this work. The rules of color and light are tools to an artist, no different than a brush or a canvas. What an artist chooses to do with these tools is what separates science from art. Consider David Sutter's rules one final time, his last one, rule number 167. Science can be learned, sentiment can be improved, genius comes from God. Well, that's all I've got for you folks today. Thank you so much for tagging along with me through this exploration of some of the scientific techniques behind Circus Sideshow. When I was first putting this episode together, I had a really hard time finding the focus of what I wanted to talk about. Circus Sideshow is a fascinating cross-section of so many different areas of art and history and literature and the history of traveling circuses, as Saltimbanques. There's Neo-Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Realism, Naturalism, Impressionism. There's so many different areas that can kind of converge on this painting that obviously I chose to focus more on the science, but there is so much more to be delved into through this painting. As always, the sources that I've used for this video, all the references and everything, are going to be linked down in the description below, so be sure to check those out. Head on over to BookwormHistory.com so you stay up to date on all of our latest content, books, articles, podcasts, videos, the whole shebang. As always, hit that subscribe button on your way out the door. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks so much for stopping by.